7 British Grand Prix wins for Lewis Hamilton, and this one looked like it'd be plain sailing. Great pole position in qualifying, led the race as well, bit of pressure from Bottas. But who saw the ending coming? Absolutely crazy scenes in the final few laps. And still somehow Hamilton clung on for the victory. Let's look straight in at these punctures. So we'd heard for a few laps before, drivers complaining of vibrations on the tyres, and Bottas actually was slowing in the laps before his puncture, clearly not happy with what was going on with his front left. Then, as he's about to complete lap 49, the front left goes, and just through Club Corner and Vale, you can just see the front left starting to go, and this is the worst possible moment for Bottas because the pit lane entry is just gone. He's just missed his chance to get back into the pits. It's a really long lap at Silverstone to get back round on 3 wheels basically, and in a flash his chance of finishing second at least to Hamilton is gone, and he ended up with no points. The timing of his puncture was the worst possible moment, and it cost him a heap of points. Then we have Carlos Sainz gets a puncture in the McLaren. Sainz was having a good race in 5th place. Again, front left puncture. Now the front left takes a lot of work around Silverstone. There's a lot of fast right-handers, and always the outside front is the one that takes the most load. Sainz was then the second man in a couple of laps to have a puncture, and again, costly from 5th position. He was on for a really strong haul of points for McLaren. He drops out of the points as well. And you think, okay, that's it, big drama, but that's the end of the race. Oh no. Final lap, Lewis Hamilton gets a puncture from the race lead, and it looks like he might be about to lose it in a similar way to Bottas and Sainz. Now the thing for Hamilton was, the checker flag was almost in sight. He only had half a lap to go, and he managed to just limp it home ahead of Max Verstappen. Critically, Verstappen had just pitted. Red Bull pitted to put Verstappen on a new set of soft tyres, go for the fastest lap point, which he got, but he could have had the win. If Verstappen hadn't have pitted, he surely would have won the race, so long as his own tyre held together. He, in the end, managed to cut down a 34-second deficit on the final lap to just less than 6 seconds. It was a mighty effort with the fastest lap in the process, but because he took that pit stop, it just wasn't to be for him. Lewis Hamilton actually drove really well as well on the 3 wheels. It's a difficult thing to do. As soon as it went, he was crabbing on the straights, and the tyre starts flailing around. You've clearly got way limited grip, and it's a difficult moment. Luckily, he had that huge buffer. But if we look actually through the speed data of Hamilton, it's very interesting. So this is the final 2 laps then for Lewis Hamilton. In green, we've got the previous lap, lap 51, no puncture. In black, it's lap 52, the lap where he gets a puncture. And you can already see through Abbey, really fast right-hander, he's already slower through the apex speed, significantly down. And that is one of the corners where you can really help the left front by just going slower. Again, fast right-handers give the left front tyre a hard time. And Hamilton's been told on the radio, he knows there's no pressure from behind now, so he goes slower through the fast right. That's all good. 17 more corners to go. And what's bizarre is this was a race where Lewis Hamilton hadn't complained about the tyres. How many times have we heard him leading a Grand Prix and questioning the tyres? I can't remember the last one he won without questioning the tyres. This time he didn't, and it's the one where it lets go. Look, into Brooklands, and suddenly he feels the left front is deflating. He eases off just before the braking zone, brakes very early, and loses time through the apex. He now knows there's a problem. And actually, if we go on board with him through Luffield, you can see this really materialise. Suddenly, the left front's not working. Again, it's a right-hand corner where you need that left front working, and he's just understeering really, really wide, right up to the gravel. And now you can already see the tyre's deflating. There's a few sparks coming out from under the car where it's grinding against the tarmac. And this is a problem now. He's got a reasonable distance still to go, about 3 kilometres on 3 wheels. So we flip back to the speed data, and now look, Luffield, super, super slow. He's now hemorrhaging a lot of time to Verstappen. Look at the straight line speed between Luffield and Copse. Hamilton's just really measuring the throttle, about half speed from what he's done before. Copse corner again, very, very slow, and then he tries to accelerate a little bit on the exit. Always the traction zones, you've got a chance because that's where you use the rear tyres more than the front on slow speed acceleration. He's heard in his radio the gap to Verstappen. Basically, he knows what he needs to try and do. But again, Stowe corner, another one of those quick right-handers, and he's very, very slow at the apex, so he's really hemorrhaging time. Final corner, panic. He goes in so deep at Vale, really late on the brakes. If we zoom in, he brakes slightly earlier than the previous lap, but he actually almost carries exactly the same entry speed than he's done without a puncture. He's got the front left completely locked up. That's doing no work at all at this point, and he's carrying in so much speed. It's a left-hander. You can get away with it more because this time the load is on the front right. Then he's very slow through the final couple of corners. But by that point, it doesn't really matter. Limps to the line, spectacular fashion, spectacularly slow speed to the checker flag, but a 7th win and a very well-deserved win.
That was close.
But I have to say, looking through the race of the Mercedes, I was actually quite disappointed with Valtteri Bottas. Again, his pace was good, matching Hamilton really throughout the race, pushing Hamilton really, and the two of them towards hurting their tyres. Probably it's no coincidence that the Mercedes tyres, going quickest, particularly through high-speed corners, suffered more than everyone else. But other aspects of Bottas' race I thought were actually a little bit disappointing. And it starts with the start. I can't remember the last time that Valtteri Bottas beat Lewis Hamilton when he didn't lead out of the first corner. When he starts behind Hamilton, and he's behind Hamilton on the first lap, it's very difficult to beat him. Hamilton's a sublime driver. Bottas is a very good driver as well. But trying to beat Hamilton at one of his best tracks as well, at Silverstone, without leading off the line, very difficult. So I just thought, as they're lining up, Bottas doesn't do it at the start. He's in for a long afternoon. Now, lights go out. We're on board with Bottas. He gets a great start, and you think this is his chance. He drives alongside Lewis Hamilton. If I pause it just on the turn in now to turn 1, he's got a really good amount of his car alongside Hamilton. He could open up the corner slightly more. There's a bit of a gap to Hamilton, so he's pinched himself slightly on space on the entry. But look at what happens as they go through the apex. Hamilton turns in, Bottas turns in, and blends completely out of the throttle in a very fast corner. And again, we pause it down at turn 3, the game's over. Hamilton's completely clear, no need to defend, no need to really look in the mirrors at this point. Bottas will never make a lunge from there. And actually Bottas, now in the dirty air, suffers with a bit of a front right lock up and a slide from the rear as well. Would have loved him to be a bit more decisive. I think many other drivers would have kept their foot in on the inside of Hamilton. And if they had to blend out, at least blend out in a way that you still force him to have to defend at turn 3. But Bottas backed off so much at turn 1 that Hamilton then is absolutely scot-free at turn 3 to do what he likes under zero pressure. Bottas got a great start. It's not often these days that Hamilton gets a bad start. He used to. Back in the Rosberg days, Hamilton used to be more prone to a bad start. This time, he didn't get a great one. Bottas got alongside, but then he let Hamilton entirely off the hook here. And when these guys are the only ones fighting for the championship, really, it's something that I don't think he can afford to do anymore, especially now with his big deficit. So that's the first part of the race. Bottas not able to capitalise on his good start. But then there's a safety car. Kevin Magnussen has had a big crash with Alex Albon. Safety car comes out and you think, okay, this is a chance to regroup and try and do something. It is actually pretty rare that you see a move for the lead on a safety car restart these days, to be honest. But it's still a great chance for the man in second to put the man in first under some pressure. And this should have been a chance that Bottas could take to just force Hamilton to feel the pressure, get it all right in the first few corners. If any lock-up happened, Bottas should be there to pounce. So we go on board with Bottas on the restart. Now we're coming into Stowe, and Bottas is a long way from Lewis Hamilton, but you can still see the safety car ahead. Hamilton clearly cannot go and drop the hammer down just yet. The safety car's got to peel off first, and if Hamilton goes now, he'll probably overtake the safety car and get a penalty. So Bottas, at this point, can be a bit further back. And now he closes up the gap. Now, if I pause it there, he's in an okay position, just behind Hamilton. Now, on a safety car restart, really, you've got one job to do, and that is to just get the best restart you possibly can. Bottas should already be in the right settings, and he's just got to look at when Hamilton goes. He knows roughly when he's going to go. He's going to be around Stowe corner. Bottas has got to try and go with him, and at least try and pressure him on potentially cold tyres. Will he make a mistake? I know it's unlikely that he'll make a move for the lead, but this is a chance that he can at least give it a go, put some pressure on Hamilton. But look, Hamilton goes, does a couple of weaves just to distract Bottas and goes. And if I pause it there, Hamilton leaps ahead of Bottas on the restart. Now, Bottas had one job here, and that was to go with Hamilton and try and put pressure on him. Again, Hamilton absolutely scot-free here in one of the areas that normally as a race leader you don't love. It's an uncomfortable situation to do a safety car restart. Well, he's got the right man behind him on this time because Bottas was sleeping and Hamilton's gone. And in fact, if we look at it from outside of the car, you can see on the exit of Stowe Corner, if I pause it there, look at that. You got Lewis Hamilton in isolation mode out front, and then Bottas now with a string of cars, Verstappen and Leclerc, they've all been alert behind, but Bottas has left Hamilton many cars lengths to run his own restart, which is very nice to your teammate, especially when you're title fighting. If at first you don't succeed, try again. He had another safety car restart to go for. Daniel Kvyat's had a big crash because his rear tyre failed coming through maggots, and we get another safety car. Now, let's go on board with Bottas for this one. So, you'd have thought he'd learn a lot from the previous safety car restart, and actually he's in a slightly better place this time. He's a little bit wider on the way into Stowe, and that gives him a straighter exit, so that's a good job. Then Hamilton doing his weaves again, but this time he doesn't go, so he's mixing up the tactics, Hamilton here, because he knows that Bottas has probably learned from the first one. But then when Hamilton does go, he just manages to drop the hammer down and catch Bottas slightly napping again this time. Now, I have to say, this time, Bottas is not a bad safety car restart. This one's okay. It's way better than the previous one. And with the power that Formula One cars have got now, the leader can choose when to put the hammer down. And Bottas was slightly later, therefore the gap opens up. But again, if we flick to the outside shot, Hamilton does his weaves, and then he goes slightly later. You can see there, look at where Verstappen is compared to Bottas. Now, this is where ideally Bottas could be behind Hamilton. He's putting pressure on him. Verstappen didn't make it through. It is difficult to pass on a safety car restart, but again, it's a chance to try and make something happen. And when the two Mercedes guys are so evenly matched, a restart like this could be an opportunity. Verstappen, super aggressive in the Red Bull. He's done it right. And Bottas, look, it's not bad, this one, but against his championship rival, I just hope that he would be slightly punchier here. So then Bottas goes through the rest of the race now. His pace, very good. And he's always had very good pace, Valtteri Bottas. He's a really, really good Formula One driver. And that's why he's in Mercedes. That's why he's won many Grand Prix, had pole positions. He can fight Lewis Hamilton. And pace has never been the problem. But when he has the puncture, he drops back out of the points. He gets a final chance to get one championship point. Sainz has had his issue as well. And Bottas catches Sebastian Vettel on very old hard tyres at the end of the Grand Prix. One last attempt into Stowe, final lap. And let's have a look at what happened here. So DRS open, Bottas on soft tyres, behind Vettel on hard tyres. Now, Verstappen was on new soft tyres on the final lap as well. And to put this into context, Verstappen lapped 4.7 seconds quicker than Sebastian Vettel on the final lap. There's a huge gulf in performance on a new set of soft tyres and a fast car against Vettel, who quite frankly struggled all weekend anyway, and he's on aged hard tyres. Potentially there was a bit of damage on Bottas's car, we don't know, after he did the lap on the puncture. But you'd have still thought, soft tyres on the Mercedes, even with some small aero damage, he should have plenty in the tank to try and pass Vettel. And he gets the slipstream, gets the DRS, goes for the outside, and he's almost ahead coming into the corner. But then he gives Vettel so much space, he goes so wide around the outside, almost doing like a conventional wet line at Stowe. And Vettel comes back through, and then Bottas is almost within lunging distance for the final corner, but can't make it through there. So in the end, that was worth 1 point. The drivers all tried pretty hard for the fastest lap. That's worth 1 point as well. And here I just think that was a 1 point that Bottas should have had at the end of the race. The gap now in the championship is 30 points. Hamilton's going to be tough to beat, really tough to beat. Bottas is going to need luck, and he's going to need to get his elbows out with Lewis Hamilton an awful lot more than he's shown in the British Grand Prix there. If Bottas is going to win the title, he's going to have to get a bit of luck now. He's also going to have to get racy with Lewis Hamilton, because at the moment I think Hamilton is just so comfortable with him as his teammate. Some good battles in the rest of the field. Alex Albon in the wars again on the first lap. He's had contact with other drivers in quite a few of the recent races, and it was the case at the end of lap 1 with Kevin Magnussen this time. Magnussen had a good start, got ahead of Albon on the first lap, and then into Vale, goes ever so slightly defensive on Albon, who's just shown a nose in the Red Bull, much faster car than the Haas, and Magnussen knows he's there. Turns in though to the apex. Albon was too far back to do anything, and look, if I pause it there, Magnussen just hits that red elevated sausage curb, and that just throws his car a little bit wide. Albon's had the perfect view of this, he's seen what's happened. Magnussen's then really slow to the throttle, just staying within the track, and Albon goes for it up the inside. And if I pause it there, he's pretty much completely alongside Kevin Magnussen as we get to the second apex, really, the final corner. And then at the last minute, Magnussen still comes across all the way, and Albon backs out of the throttle, and they have contact. Left front of Albon into the right rear of Magnussen, and Kevin sent quite high speed into the barriers. The stewards had a look at this one and deemed during the race that a 5-second penalty for Albon was appropriate. I strongly disagree with this one. I think Albon was really far enough up the inside that he deserved a bit of space at the apex of that corner. Drivers can run side by side through that corner. We saw it the previous year with Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. They actually went wide on the exit last year, but there is space on the exit if you need it. So Magnussen continued to turn in, gave Albon absolutely zero space on the apex when Albon was pretty much completely alongside. And really, I think Kevin can blame himself for that retirement. Very harsh penalty on Alex Albon. People will compare it also to the Hamilton-Albon one from Austria, the first round, where Hamilton got a penalty from the inside, but it's a very different incident. Hamilton understeered wide to the outside of the corner and hit Albon there. If Albon had come across and taken Hamilton's space on the apex, then I think it would have been quite different. This one was harsh on Albon, who actually had a good recovery drive and got back to the points after this, but strange call. The other incident that was called to the steward's attention was Romain Grosjean for his exuberant defensive manoeuvres. The first one comes on Carlos Sainz down the hangar straight. If we go on board with Sainz, he's in the slipstream of Grosjean, jinks out, and then Grosjean just at the last minute reacts to the flash of papaya he can probably see in his right mirror and just moves reactionary, and Sainz basically is called out by this. He has to lift off and can't make the move through because of Grosjean's late swerve. Grosjean didn't move that far, to be honest, in this, and Grosjean's argument was that he left more than a car's width. He's left loads of space on the inside. That's not the problem. The problem is the reactionary move, and Carlos Sainz has got to have very quick reactions not to hit the back of Grosjean. It's on the limit of dangerous driving, really, this one. And the drivers have all got a sort of driver's code that says don't do these change of directions at the last minute, particularly reactionary, because when you're going at 200 miles an hour, it's very difficult to react in a split second to not have a driver going up the back of the other one. You could have a massive crash. So Michael Massey, race director, issued the warning flag for the first time in a long time, which I thought, you know what, that is a good use of the warning flag. I don't think Grosjean deserves a penalty outright for this one, but a warning. It was pretty unsavoury, and you'd think if he does it again, then maybe then you do have to look at it. But he did do it again. And this time it's on Daniel Ricciardo. So Carlos Sainz has made it through, and now Ricciardo's trying to pass Grosjean, who hasn't pitted in his Haas, and he's fighting with these guys on a very different strategy here. He's hoping for another safety car. So Ricciardo gets the slipstream, now coming down towards Brooklands, different part of the track, and again, Ricciardo looks to the inside, exactly the same thing again. Grosjean sees flash of yellow, luckily he's fighting very bright cars, and he just jinks to the left again, and Ricciardo again has to really react very late and go further to the inside. Again, for Romain, he's left the cars with, he's left loads of space for the inside, but it's the late reactionary move that is quite frankly a little bit dangerous.
Yep. Yeah, that was sketchy.
And this one then was referred to the stewards after Michael Massey issued the warning flag. The next one, he backed it up by referring it to the stewards, who looked at it post-race and gave Grosjean a warning again. But to be honest, this doesn't make a big difference to the race. Grosjean didn't score any points. Ricciardo had a really good drive and finished 4th. It is going to be something that I'm sure the drivers are going to discuss at length in the next drivers' briefing. This sort of driving is not that clever because, again, you just risk a really big accident. If the guy behind doesn't react in that split second, he's going to go launching over the car ahead. And we've had these sort of incidents before. We've had moments like this before. Moving under braking is particularly bad, but even on a straight line, if you defend, you've got to go proactively. Defend before the guy behind is right there and shows his nose. If you go reactively, you're simply taking the space that he is fully expecting to be in, and then it's a last gasp reaction, avoid of a crash basically for both Sainz and Ricciardo. They both got away with it, but it's going to be a long meeting, I think, for the drivers at the next race. But Ricciardo carried on and finished a really good 4th place, almost got a podium as well. Charles Leclerc, great drive to get that podium. And there was some really good scrapping between the Renault of Ricciardo, both McLaren, some nice moves. Good drive from Esteban Ocon as well, who had some nice scrapping with Lance Stroll. And I was really impressed with Pierre Gasly. He's been on fire this year, really. In fact, ever since he's been back to Toro Rosso or now AlphaTauri, he's been doing a really good job. He put in a lovely move on Sebastian Vettel around the outside of Stowe, inside of Vale, and he was maybe even my driver of the day. Really strong drives through the midfield, lots of great racing action there, and hopefully we'll get some more great racing action at the front when we return next week.